Content warning. This episode discusses mental health, depression, substance use, anger, and sensitive family dynamics. Some topics may be triggering. Please listen with care and prioritize your well-being. Listener discretion is advised.
In the Caribbean, a lot of us were raised not just as children, but as a backup plan. So from a young age, we were taught to be strong enough to understand adult problems as children, strong enough to help out, strong enough to hold it together, strong enough to do the right thing, to carry responsibilities that we really never asked for. But nobody ever really stopped to ask us as kids how heavy that responsibility feels, especially when we're carrying it alone. Many of us were expected to put our dreams on hold, put our lives on pause, mute our emotions, all for the sake of family, all in the name of family. And then when the pressure gets too much, we're just told to pray more or toughen up, or even worse yet, to stay quiet. Today, I want to talk about that weight, the expectations that are placed on children, and the silence around mental health, and what happens when nobody really sees you, but everybody needs you. So this episode isn't about blame. It isn't about blaming aunties, uncles, parents, grandparents, anybody like that. It's about honesty. It's about talking openly and honestly about expectations and pressures and what that does to our mental health. And that's because for many of us, we were raised to carry everything. But nobody ever really asks us how heavy that is or how heavy that was. And that's because somewhere along the line, along that path, along that way, being strong became more important than being okay. And in today's episode of Trini Talk, we're going to dive straight into all of those things. So, anybody new here? I'm Darian. This is Trini Talks episode 2. Today is going to be a kind of heavy episode, but if any of this resonates with you, feel free to drop a comment down below and let's dive straight into this. So, growing up, a lot of us had, especially in the Caribbean growing up, a lot of us had parental expectations placed on us. Because in Caribbean households, expectations don't come with conversations. They come with assumptions. So you're expected to help. You're expected to sacrifice. You're expected to put your life on hold quietly. And if you don't, you are made to feel ungrateful. So we are raised with this mindset from young that we owe our caretakers or our guardians or parents or siblings. So we are brought up with that mindset that we owe. And diving into that, parental expectations, we have a few things to discuss. The first talking points I want to dive into is children becoming caretakers before they get to be children. An example of this, as we delve into this, is more so growing up. If you are the eldest, now I am the last for one parent and I am the only for one parent, so I did not experience this one, but I know people who did. But growing up as an older sibling, or if you're in an extended family household in the Caribbean, which a lot of us are, where it's you, your parents, your grandparents, or your uncle or your younger cousins, being the eldest or one of the older ones or only one there, you are expected to be the caretaker. So you may have to put being a child on hold. You can't go out and play with your friends anymore as much as you would like to do as being a kid. what you are expected to do is when grandma or grandpa or your uncle or your auntie needs something, you're expected to step up and help. A lot of us would have experienced this in terms of our grandparents. When they're older, you have to take care of them to some extent. So when essentially you go by grandparents for holidays, let's just say to spend time with them and your cousins, sometimes it goes from spending time with your cousins and your grandparents to you more taking care of them. I know a few of you may be able to attest to things like this, especially if you have older grandparents at home. And when you were younger, it shifts because mommy and daddy may be working, so you're home. You have to see about your grandparents. Same thing in regards to your siblings. If you're older one or more mature one, you are now put in that role of caretaker to look after the younger ones as well. So what goes from you being a kid coming home from school maybe to enjoy an evening of relaxing, watching TV, playing with your friends, you now have to take care of members of the family. And that is a burden placed on you. So you may have learned to do things at an early age to look out for them, since this burden was placed on you, this responsibility. And that leads into another expectation and another point, which is you have to sacrifice your dreams, times, peace, and relationships sometimes to do this because, again, if you're the more mature one or the older one, as you get older, sometimes we are forced to put our lives on hold, our dreams, our relationships, and everything else in between to help take care of the household. And in the Caribbean, it's a norm. It isn't something that people really think about much because it's something we're brought into. As you get older, you have to start contributing, which is okay. But at some point, we end up sacrificing things that we want for ourselves, be it, again, dreams, time, peace, or relationships to help the home. And another great example of this would be as we get older, our parents also get older. And then this isn't for every household, of course, but for the ones who understand, they understand. As we get older, our parents get older, and some of our parents, when they were younger and enjoying life, they didn't plan ahead. They did not put anything in place. So now as we get older, we now have to start taking care of parents. Now this isn't a blame game or pointing fingers. Some of them were brought up this way, and it just passed on. But part of this is some of our parents, as they got older, while they were young, they didn't put things in place for emergencies. They had no savings put aside or a retirement plan or money for health issues. So there was no consideration for when they got older, and then that burden was placed on us to now have to be the ones to in turn step up so that we can look after them because they again were unable to put things in place for themselves. And this puts a weight on us, again leading to us having to sacrifice time and relationship and peace and all of those things because we, as I said, we feel like we owe it to them. That's how we're brought up. So now we put our lives completely on hold to see about them. Yeah? And this is something as well you all may know about, but in some families, not all, some families, they like to use the guilt trip as a weapon. And growing up in a Trinidadian household or a Caribbean household, you probably experienced this from a parent or a guardian or somebody older at some point. When you speak your mind or you speak up about something, you're always gonna hear a few of these quotes. You're gonna hear, after all I do for you, I make you use a child, use my child, you're supposed to do this. You're always gonna hear you're ungrateful. And then on top of all of that, cultural silence is a thing in the country, in the Caribbean, in this whole atmosphere, not atmosphere but hemisphere. Then culture for this type of thing is you be silent. They talk because they're the adults, you stay quiet, you listen. And respect equals honesty, or respect is more so not equal to honesty in a Caribbean whole. Respect is more so disrespectful. So if you are honest, it's disrespectful. If you speak up, it's disrespectful. Respect is you being quiet and taking what they tell you. Respect is less looked at in Caribbean households in that regard. And that's the next issue here in the Caribbean, where the moment you say something that your parents or guardians don't agree with you, you're gonna get hit with you're ungrateful. You feel you're a big woman, you feel you're a big man all of a sudden. And again, it goes back to the guilt as a weapon. So my thing is, at least for this aspect of this, which is, us talking about parental expectations, my thing is, love shouldn't or should never feel like a debt that you could never repay. While I get it, we're expected to handle everything because we're strong, and the unspoken rule of family comes first, even if you're drowning, or there's the other expectation, or the other unspoken rule where blood is thicker than water. While I know that is expected for us and expected out of us, I feel like it shouldn't be like that. So that is where we need to have conversations about things like that. And again, when you spend your whole life carrying expectations from everyone around you, sometimes things start to crack. And those pressures, they don't just disappear and fade away. It turns into stress, it turns into anger, it turns into silence, it sometimes turns into resentment. And that is where mental health tends to enter the conversation now, whether we want it to or not. And that's where it gets dangerous, because again, when you're raised to carry everything from such a young age, you are not taught how to put anything down. You don't learn how to rest. You don't learn how to ask for help. You just learn how to survive quietly and in silence. And that silence is where mental health starts to suffer. And this is where we jump into mental health and depression, because if you follow along with what you just say, with what I just said, you'd notice I mentioned a few points with what I just said. Some of those being, you don't ask for help, you suffer quietly. I could give you an example for me. Growing up from small, I've never asked for help. Maybe it's because of how I was brought up. I refused to ask for help. I would rather suffer quietly than ask anyone for help. That's just me personally. I don't ask for help. And in my regards, at least with me, that's where I tend to lash out, because sometimes it leads to stress, overthinking. And when I'm overwhelmed, I may lash out. And again, resentment, anger, stress, all of these things build up over time with this constant pressure. And then when it pops, that's it. You finally say what you need to say, and then everybody vexes with you. So yeah, that's usually how it goes in the Caribbean. But something we need to also look at is depression. In the Caribbean, depression is also always dismissed, most times, as being lazy or being a form of weakness. I cannot tell you how much times you'll see Caribbean parents come in your room because you had a long day or you're not feeling it, you're down, and they'll be like, what are you sad for? You have a roof over your head. You have food. You have nothing to be sad for. You have nothing to be depressed for. You're lazy. I have examples of all of those things, but I digress. Trinidad and Tobago is a sweet place, but we tend to not look at mental health or depression much. But depression is sometimes not just depression. It could be masked as anger, as I said, or irritability or withdrawal. Me personally, I don't know if I have depression. I never went in to get tested, see a psych, nothing like that. But across my years out of high school, from the age of, let's say, 20, after UE 20s, I have slowly, me myself personally, have slowly withdrawn from a lot of activities. I've slowly been under the stress of taking care of things because that is what I have to do. I've kind of distanced myself from doing as much as I used to. I withdraw on my off days. I'm in my room most of the day, just mindlessly scrolling or watching TV if I feel like doing that sometimes. There's the anger that comes with it. Then, some of us, at least growing up, because of my situations, I had few friends. Um, I had I have good friends, but they are very few. And now we're adults. Everybody has their own life to live. And that being said, now I am here by myself in regards to certain things. When it comes to partying, going out, I can't just call on someone and say, let's go out and have fun, or friends to go to fetes, or friends to go to do this, or to do that, or to do the next. So my life, I have slowly withdrawn into my shell, being by myself most of the time because of things like that, and life and other circumstances. Yeah. And another thing that we tend to overlook is we tend to be, or not tend to be, but it's more of a feeling of being seen but not heard. So, you go out, you see people see you, but you still always feel like you're not heard. The same thing like when you're home, you are seen. You feel like everybody at home sees you, but nobody listens to you when you cries or when you speak up. Because if you say you're sad, as always, as I said, you have food while you're sad. It has some people out there who have it worse than you. Why you sad? You have a bed, you have TV, you have a phone. Why you sad? You want nothing to be sad for. So there's always this bias of, because you have this, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not entitled to feel sad. Caribbean homes are like that. And this sometimes drives some people towards substance use. An example of this is more youths, be it people from 18 to 30 now, which I consider youths, turning towards drinking a lot, smoking a lot, drugs a lot. Some of them try to reach out and make new friends, all for the purpose of being seen and heard, and to quiet their mind, because some people don't feel like they get that love at home, so they reach out to friends or try to form new relationships outside of that to do that. Some turn to alcohol, some turn to drugs. Some people just look for that way to find comfort and silence their mind. And a prime example of this is in men, especially in the Caribbean. Men are taught to suppress. We are taught that we are supposed to be strong. We are not supposed to feel. We are not supposed to be sad. We are not supposed to express what we feel. And most times when you do, somebody who all going and tell it, you're a little girl, why you talking like that? Why you saying that? You're a girl, toughen up, man up, you're a man. And that's just how the Caribbean is. We are taught to suppress. and suppress and suppress until we finally explode, and then we express, and then we are heard. Then we are seen. When we explode and let it all out and everybody get blast, then we are heard. And something I want you all to remember, right, is just because we survive, it doesn't mean we are okay. A lot of us know this. Just because we survive it don't mean we're okay. I am surviving. That don't mean I'm okay, but I'm surviving. You'd notice, at least me personally, when anybody asks me how I going, I say I okay. I chillin', I normal. And I gotta let everybody know on my mind and why I stressed for, but in the Caribbean, that's how it is. You need to be strong. And anger for us is the only acceptable emotion. And that's sad. That is sad. And the hardest part is when you carry everyone else, nobody carries you. And a lot of us don't even realize how much we're struggling with this. And it's because in our culture, pain isn't something we talk about, it's something we tend to hide. And that, again, in itself is sad. Acknowledging what we need to realize is acknowledging the damage doesn't mean that we don't love our guardians, our parents, or uncles or grandparents. It just means that we're choosing honesty over silence. And that is where the healing begins. That is where we start. That is what we need to look at. We need to look at healing past these things. And healing is tough. Healing is tough because in the Caribbean, there's a lot of generational trauma we need to get past. And that's because our parents were brought up a certain way, and that's because their parents were brought up a certain way, and their parents' parents were brought up a certain way, and it trickles down to us. And it's no fault of their own. Sometimes parents are just repeating what they are taught. They don't know any better. They grew up in a time where that was the normal, and they're just repeating what they saw, what they were taught to us. And that's where we come in. We need to break that cycle. Of course, we need to try to do that without disrespect, but however, sometimes it does come across as disrespectful. But it's more about intent versus impact. We need to use our intent to try to break this. And intent would lead to it being impactful in the long run. Understanding our parents, again, doesn't mean accepting the damage. Understanding guardians, parents, grandparents, whoever you're brought up by, doesn't mean accepting the damage. But understanding it is part of healing. Once you understand, you will now know, if you have kids in the future, what not to do and what to do. And I always use that as an example. I always say, when it's my turn to have kids, if I have kids, I want them to have the perfect life I never had. I want to be able to bring them up a little bit differently and give them things I didn't have and do things with them that I wasn't able to do with my parents. And I think a lot of us grew up with that mindset that we want better for our kids than we had. And part of this is choosing yourself sometimes, and you should not feel guilty about choosing yourself. That's one of the main things we need to look at. Start choosing ourselves now, and we need to start having conversations as we get older. We need to start having conversations, even if it's awkward, even if it's tough conversations with our parents, grandparents, siblings, whomever. We need to start having these conversations, whether it's awkward or tough. At some point before they go, we need to sit down with them and express how we feel. That is all part of of healing. And you also need to remember, as someone growing up from young until you're an adult, and even when you have your kids, you don't owe anyone your life. And same applies to when you have your kids or when I have my kids. I always say my kids, I don't want them to owe me anything, you know? And that's just how it is. That's how the Caribbean is. These are things we need to change and look at. And again, you're human. We're all human. You're not weak for struggling. You're just human. Struggling is part of life. That's how it is. And a lot of us are broken. A lot of us are exhausted from carrying generation upon generation upon generation of expectations, and from pretending we're okay when we're really not. And a lot of us are also exhausted and tired from being strong for everyone except ourselves. And I personally could attest to that. But again, we need to look into breaking the cycle. And it's okay to set boundaries. It's okay as you get older to set lines, as they say, draw a line across the sand and set your boundaries. It's okay to say you can't or you won't. And it's okay to say no. You need to choose yourself. You know, all these are parts of breaking the cycle. Caring about your family doesn't mean destroying yourself. It really doesn't mean killing yourself to make everybody else happy. Because at the end of the day, you have to be happy as well. And you cannot make everybody happy if you're not happy. At the end of the day, when everybody dead and gone, I just always tell all my cousins this, all my friends this. At the end of the day, what you do for you. Because when the dust settle, everything clear, and everybody dead and gone, you're going to be here by yourself. And your decisions then to make them happy might have make them happy then and made you unhappy. So now you have to live unhappy when they go. So again, it's never too late. Start choosing yourself and setting your boundaries. Make yourself happy first. Healing is uncomfortable, especially in cultures built on silence, like in the Caribbean. And you can love your parents, you know. We all love our parents. We all love our family. We all love them. But you can still admit that they failed in some ways. And as always, tell everybody this, right? And as always say this, you can love a TV show and still pick out the flaws in it. You can love a movie and still find the flaws in it and say, I love this movie, but it was wrong, or the flaw was this, or this didn't make sense. And it's the same thing with life. You can love everybody around you, your parents, whoever brought you up, but you could still admit to yourself that they failed in certain ways or certain aspects. And in those aspects, you need to learn from that. So when it's your turn to be in that position, you know not to make the same mistakes that they did. And breaking the cycle, again, is uncomfortable. But continuing them going to cost you even more. It's going to cost you even more when you have your own kids and you're in that position. So you're allowed to choose yourself. You need to choose yourself. You really do. And I get it. I understand. As I say, I understand. A lot of people who are watching this, if you're out of the Caribbean, you may still resonate with some of these things. A lot of people here may resonate with it. Whoever watch it, I just want you all to know there are ways to go about things. There are ways to change. Simple steps. You can look out to try to get a psychologist or a therapist. Find someone you could speak to. Reach out to someone. Even if you don't want to go that route, find a trusted friend. If you don't trust anyone yet, try journaling. Journaling might help. Try finding yourself again. If you're like me and you're inside all the time now because you don't have anyone to do anything with or go anywhere, start doing things by yourself. Go to the movies alone, go out to eat alone. um, Simple as going for a run, going for a walk. Some people turn to pets. Get a pet if you could. uh, if you're single and you're looking for companionship, try going out there in the world and interacting a little bit. Take it step by step, but find some way to, find yourself again. Start healing. Healing is long, it takes time, but start healing, start working on yourself. Try having those hard to have conversations with the people around you who may have caused these things to happen. Have those conversations. It's especially if you're older now, it's time to have those conversations. Speak up, let your voice be heard now, because you've done enough in that regard for everyone around you. You need to start working on yourself and doing more for you to improve you and make you feel better. Yeah. So if this episode feels heavy, it was because it's real. If you see yourself in any of the things I said, any of these things I mentioned, just remember you're not weak, you're not selfish, you're a human. We're raised to carry it all, but we don't have to keep doing it alone anymore. Thank you all for listening to Trini Talks. If this episode resonates with you or someone you may know who needs to hear this message or needs an outlet to vent, feel free to share the video, comment down below, have some discussions. You could reach out to me. And yeah, until next time, take care of yourselves. Everyone, please take care of yourselves. Eat better, drink better, do better, and focus on yourselves. Try to improve day by day. Even little steps count as improving. Try to break the cycles, try to heal, and be there for everyone if you could, but also choose yourself. Focus on yourself. Keep choosing yourself. It's okay, as I said, to say no. It's okay to say you can't. It's okay to say you won't. Choose yourself. Put a foot down and, start looking out for yourself. Don't just look out for everyone around you and carry all these expectations and burdens. Look out for you. But yeah, until the next time, I'll see you all again. I hope you all listen and learn something. And next one, we'll try to make it a little more lighthearted. And yeah, until the next one, I'll see you all. If you are lucky, I'll leave the clip in where the chair tilted back and I almost fall. If you see that, you can have a little laugh to kind of, lighten up the mood. But until next time, guys, I'll see you all. Bye. So let's just jump straight into that. As you could see what just happened. So that's gonna be, something maybe we leave in or we leave out. Who knows?